I mean, I was just trying to represent accurately what Alex's objection was. I wasn't giving an objection. I was just saying, and I said several times, this is what Alex is saying.
Right.
Because we were just misunderstanding what you were saying.
So what's the problem with using, what is the problem with using language to formulate thoughts and ideas about logical possibility?
I mean,
let's
on the physicalist view.
Language is rule governed.
Let's swing it back to the rule following. Hang on, let's swing it back to the rule following argument, Josh. In virtue of what are you using the language correct?
It might not be. It's possible, but until there's some evidence to show that I am, I'm just going to go by my fallibilist epistemology and say that until there's evidence that shows that I'm wrong, I'm going to assume that I'm right.
Well, when it comes to using words correctly, it doesn't really matter when you're in your own
in virtue of what? The question still applies. Right? In virtue of what? In virtue of what do you think that you're right?
In the virtue of the fact that there's no evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, but he's asking for what it would mean for you to be wrong.
Right, exactly.
What would it mean for me to be wrong? It would to be wrong.
What does it mean?
It means to be wrong is that there would be some evidence that would show that there was some discrepancy, right?
What makes something a discrepancy?
Well, it's out of accord.
Look, you have to stop using normative language, right? Because the whole point is...
Why?
Because the whole point is that normative is underdetermined by the non-normative.
Yeah, but that's okay. So what if it's underdetermined? I can be wrong about norms.
That means it's not.
No, that's not what he means.
I can be wrong about it.
He means it's like ontologically or metaphysically underdetermined, not just that you don't know.
Well, I don't know what that means. I can be wrong. We could be wrong about what? The laws of gravitation. We most likely are. Or just like Newton was wrong about the laws of gravitation, and Einstein came along and made corrections. Right? The reason that they made corrections is because there were anomalies in the orbit of Mercury, and other anomalies in light passing close to a massive star, right? But if there were no anomalies, there would be no reason to think that Newton's laws of motion were incorrect. Just like with the Pentium case, if there were no anomalous results coming back showing that they had incorrectly implemented the algorithm in the Pentium computer, there would have been no reason for them to check it. Right?
It just seems that under your worldview, right, under this physicalist worldview, anomaly doesn't mean anything. In virtue of what could it possibly be anomalous?
But it was in the case of the Pentium program. People checked it independently with their own calculations, and they got back because they were getting back wrong answers from the Pentium chip. Right.
Yeah, but why? What in virtue of what were they the wrong answers rather than the right answers?
In virtue of an independent check.
No. You can check and have the same outcome, right? But if that outcome were the desirable outcome, then it would be the right outcome. So you could have the same outcome, and it could be relative to one aim, it can be the correct outcome, and relative to the other, it can be the incorrect outcome. So with the Pentium thing, if what they were trying to do was get the effect that was produced every however often you were saying it, yeah. If that was...
But they weren't.
Yeah, but
the intention was to implement a certain algorithm into the silicon, right? And they made a mistake. There was an error, and they incorrectly implemented that algorithm, and they only discovered it after a period of time, and people checked and found that they had incorrectly implemented the algorithm.
Yeah, but there you're positing something over and above the functionality, what it does, and you're saying that there was an independent, goal-oriented fact which made it so that one thing was correct and the other thing was incorrect.
Well, the people, I don't know what you mean by over and above. I would say just in addition to or on. People had the intention of implementing a certain algorithm in silicon in the circuitry, and over a period of time, they got anomalous results back, and then they looked into it and discovered that it was not implemented physically in the correct way. And so then they had to change it. That would be right.
That's a good way to phrase it. When you say it was not correctly physically implemented, that's to say
in the silicon, right?
That's to say that the physical facts are incorrect, but the physical facts are whatever they are, irrespective of whether or not there's this correctness relation. You're going to have the same physical fact.
Yeah, the physical facts are the physical facts, but they were not in accord with the intentions of the designers of the chip.
Yeah, but those are part of the physical facts, right? If on your view, the intentions are part of the physical facts, right?
Well, I think that intentions, we don't understand fully how brains work, but I think that at bottom, there's not going to be such things as intentions. But I think it's sort of like a something that is a way of talking about how people behave, how people act and think. So I think that at bottom, there's not going to be anything like intentions.
Yeah, but when you say this is what you think, that just means you have some like emotional commitment to it, right? It doesn't mean anything to say that. It's not like it's based on study or like familiarity with the issues or reflection, arguments. What the objective is, right? So the more interesting question is the psychological question, which is why is it like such a deep part of your life to take positions on things that you know nothing about and to like fight tooth and nail for them? Like what's
well, I'll tell you
I mean,
what that's about.
It seems to me that's just a personal attack. That's just outside of this discussion.
Jack
well,
is full on clause. Hang on, Jack. I'd like to ask it in a more civil way because I'm also curious, right, Brenda? So like, if you found out there was if you started believing there was a fact of the matter to your intentions tomorrow, like what would be so bad about that? Like, what would be the problem that there was these intentional states out there? What do you think that would?
It would overturn all of our scientific knowledge about how the world actually works.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it does.
No,
You're saying that there are things other than simply particles moving in lines of force.
Non-naturalism doesn't contradict any proposition in the sciences because it's part of no scientific theory. It's not a proposition in any scientific theory. It's not a proposition in any scientific theory that the only properties that exist are the ones studied by the
So you're saying
that's not actually a scientific claim, right? That's a philosophical claim.
So you're saying that there exists things in addition to what the science says exists.
Yeah, science doesn't study everything that exists. Science only studies the things that the methods proprietary to the sciences can study.
Yeah,
how did you determine that there exist things that exist these things, these existences?
That's established by the rule-following argument, among other.
That's the point of his argument.
But the rule-following argument is only about logical possibility.
No, it isn't.
What?
Yeah, it just says it's logically possible that there's this thing.
No, it's not.
It doesn't say that there. Yeah, it does.
I don't know why you would say that. You don't even know what the rule following argument is. Like, this is why it's so silly. Like, you say I'm engaging in a personal attack, right? But we could go through the charade, right? Where I say, okay, what's the justification for the claim, right? And it would turn out you didn't have a justification for the claim, right? But why go to that trouble? Why play that silly game? And we've played that game like 400,000 times, right? Where I've asked you for a justification for a claim, right? And it turned out you didn't know what the fuck you were talking about, right? And so it all turned out that you just had some prior commitment to believing something that you couldn't justify, right? And then you say, I'm engaging in a personal attack. I mean, it's just a silly waste of everybody's time. Why even say something like, this is what? It's like, it's like saying, I like chocolate cake, right? It doesn't mean anything.
I mean, you could just recount the rule following argument if you think you understand.
Seamus gave a rule where he said if you had a brain state X that meant that a person had the intention that they wanted to go to the bathroom, you could also come up with a rule that said brain state X equals go to the bathroom, but after Tuesday they scratch their eye. And then from that you can say you can't determine through physical examination of the physical facts what is the fact of the matter of which particular intention is correct.
Well,
you have to show that it's possible that there could be a brain state which results in two different outcomes.
That's not quite what I said.
Yet there's no physical difference between that.
That's what I'm saying.
I just said that if you had brain state X and it just correlated, if it just was some mental state like intending to go to the bathroom, and I could just create some deviant rule that was just like if you had brain state X, then it would mean, or you would intend to go to the bathroom up until next Tuesday, and then brain state X would just, you would intend to like scratch your ass or something like that. And what I'm saying is if you were to look at your brain state before next Tuesday, you wouldn't be able to look at that brain state alone wouldn't tell you whether or not it was following your rule or my rule.
I think it's probably the wrong
I just don't.
Why should I believe that?
I think that's probably the wrong way to look at it, right? Because the whole point is that with normativity, there's a notion of failure. So if every time a person has this brain state to go to the bathroom, let's say it causes them to go to the bathroom, because it's normative, it might mean that they shouldn't have that brain state because they're following the opposite rule. But in fact, they do have that brain state, so they're just out of accord with the norm that they're supposed to be following. In virtue of that brain state, they're out of accord with the norm. That's just the notion of normativity.
Seamus's deviant rule just doesn't seem possible to me. That's why I couldn't give him a yes or no.
But it's not, I mean, I don't think it makes sense to talk about it the way he was talking about it. Like, that's like talking about it like Gru or something, it's not.
Yeah, but see, with Gru, that does seem possible. But this doesn't seem possible. And I've been trying to figure out what it was.
Well, I disagree with you that the Gru thing is possible, but I mean, yeah, but that's a separate discussion. We can talk about that later, but
that's really cool to hear that.
Yeah, we can talk about it. Yeah, we just talk about that later. I'll explain why. It's not like, I don't think it's inductive anyway, so that's why I think.
I would love it if that was destroyed.
Yeah, but insofar as the rule thing, right? So, the idea is like, take that plus and quest. Those rules are implemented by two different societies, right? But they just happen to use the same syntax, right? So,
like a plus symbol. Yep.
Yes. 125 and 5 applying the plus rule to that, you'll write 30 there. But applying the plus rule, you'll write 130 there. But applying the quus rule, you'll write 5 there, right?
Yeah.
And so you have two people from these two different societies. They both write 130. Now, they've both been presented with the exact same syntax. They both, which let's call that the physical fact. And in one case, they're in accord with the norm to write plus. They're both in accord with the norm to write plus. But one is actually following the quus rule. They're just doing it improperly. They're just making some miscalculation, right?
Yeah, so there's one of them.
On physicalism, there would be a difference between their brain states.
But again,
I think you're skipping.
Yeah, again, the whole point there is just that even if there's a difference, you can just reapply the rule following argument to that difference.
No, I don't think so. There would be a difference in outcome because there's a difference physically between the brains of the people who are following quus and those who are following plus. There would be a real physical difference.
But why do you think that matters?
Why would you wait? Doesn't the rule following argument cash out to an infinite amount of possibilities? So the idea is you could be doing quaddition when you're under the Eiffel Tower. You could have an infinite amount of parameters, which you can't do in a physical state like a brain.
No, it doesn't have anything to do with infinity. It just has to do with the nature of failure.
I thought it was because you can't clarify, you can't make a definition which includes the idea about whether you're under the Eiffel Tower or not.
No. It's not about that. It's the notion. The whole point is if you think that there's a distinction between what is and what ought to be, what ought to be is going to be determined by a rule, and what is not going to be determined by rules, right? So the whole point there is, you could even put it in an open question form of argument, right? You could say, oh, he wrote the plus sign, but ought he to have written? Sorry, he wrote the number 130, but ought he to have written the number 130? Or you could say something like, oh, he has this brain state, but ought he to have had that brain state? And that's it's if you take that distinction seriously, then it's the same thing as taking the rule following argument seriously, because that's just the nature of normativity. If you write something,
oughts don't actually exist.
If you write something inconsistent, that's what I'm saying, that you're rejecting normativity. Okay, so, we can talk about why.
Yeah, there don't exist any oughts. It's not a physical thing. An ought isn't a physical thing.
So we can talk about why.
It's just.
So we can talk about why that's self-defeating, but you interrupted.
Well, do you believe that you
gave me this canard about how interrupting was rude earlier, so I'd expect you to hold yourself to your own standard and not interrupt me. Hold yourself to your own fucking standard and don't interrupt me.
You want people to observe the rules that you don't want to follow.
Rules. I want you not to be a fucking hypocrite.
You want people to observe the rules that you don't want to follow. You want to be treated differently than how you treat other people.
To be a hypocrite. You understand that the difference is I'm not engaging in hypocrisy. I'm not engaging in hypocrisy when I interrupt people because I think interrupting people is acceptable. You are the one who is giving me pushback and telling me to shut the fuck up and not interrupt. Right? So I expect you to do the same as you demanded of other people, which is shut the fuck up.
But you think interrupting people is acceptable, right? Or don't you? Which is it?
I don't think hypocrisy is acceptable. That's right, but I don't think hypocrisy is acceptable.
Which is it, though? Which is it?
It's acceptable to interrupt people, but hypocrisy. It's acceptable to interrupt people, but hypocrisy is not. So shut the fuck up.
Uh-oh.
So it's okay when you do it. It's not okay when other people do it. Got it.
Okay when other people do it, as long as they're not hypocritical. Jesus Christ.
Aren't you being hypocritical?
No.
You're being hypocritical. You're applying your rule differently to other people than you apply it to yourself.
He's not, Brenda, because you've already stated that you would rather people don't interrupt.
I'm not objecting to you interrupting me. I'm objecting to your hypocrisy. Fucking moron. It's so crazy how stupid you are.
Let's get back to the rule following.
I just want to have a real quick question. Isn't there some doubt whether that was the way that Wittgenstein wanted it to be interpreted? And
Yeah.
What do you mean, yeah? You never read Kripke. You don't know anything about Kripke.
Kripke gave a solution. Oh, sorry.
That might be.
Well, I'm reading right here. He says he gave a solution. It says, well, guys go ahead. I'm going to try to understand it. I'm going to talk about it.
Anyway, so what I was saying is that it's part of the nature of normativity that you can be out of accord with the norm. And so what that would look like in a physical implementation is just that any physical state of affairs is going to be compatible with any norm. The reason it's going to be compatible with a norm is because, let's say it's inconsistent with having followed the rule, right? That means that if you followed the rule, the physical state would be different. That doesn't tell you anything about whether or not you're in fact following the rule. It just says that if you are following the rule, you have failed to follow the rule. It also.
What shows in the case of the Pentium processor, the fact that it was giving results that were out of accord with what we'd already, with our intentions in the algorithm to be implemented, showed that there's a physical state of affairs within the silicon, right? That showed that algorithm was not properly implemented.
It doesn't show what the rule being followed is.
It shows that it's out of accord with that rule.
Yeah, that's what I said. The whole point is you can construct any number of norms in any physical state of affairs, and they can be incompatible with any or compatible with any rules. That's the whole point. It can show that
no, that's not true.
It's not compatible.
That's not true.
It's compatible with there being a rule, but it's not compatible with following the rule, right? If you had followed the rule, then you wouldn't have observed the phenomenon. But it's not about whether or not it's compatible with the rule, because all the rule is that it shouldn't be the case that under such and such conditions we get this physical outcome, presumably the one that you're talking about.
Right. So the fact that we were getting anomalous results told us that we had incorrectly implemented the rule.
Right, that you weren't.
I don't see what's problematic about that.
What's problematic about that is that you're not deducing from physical facts that you're not following the rule.
No, we aren't deducing from physical facts.
Sorry. You're not deducing from the physical facts which rule is being followed.
Well, no, that's true. That's true. The fact that you get anomalous results from the incorrect implementation in the silicon doesn't tell us what rule the silicon is following. It does tell us that it's not following the rule that we originally intended to implement.
I don't understand what you're saying.
It's following a different rule, one that it is following. There was a rule that was implemented in the silicon, and we intended it to be this particular algorithm. And it turns out that 1 in 9 million calculations, it gives the incorrect result. Well, that shows us that it's been incorrectly implemented. It doesn't tell us what rule it's following, just that it's not following the one we intended it to follow.
It just sounds like you're conceding to the objection, so I don't understand what you're saying. It sounds like you're saying that it's consistent with either rule, that there being either rule, and it's just on the one rule, it's inconsistent with having followed the rule, and on the other, it's not inconsistent with having followed that rule. But that doesn't tell you about what's the fact of the matter about what rule it's following. It doesn't tell you.
Yeah, we don't care about that though. We simply want it to follow our original intentions. The engineers made a mistake in the silicon, and so now it's doing something differently than was intended. That doesn't tell us what it is, what rule it's following. No, of course not. But that's not the point. Nobody cares.
Well, I don't understand why you're saying nobody cares, and I also don't understand. So, like earlier in the conversation, I said you should stop availing yourself of normative language, and you said why, and then you just later said that there are no oughts, and so that's probably why you should stop availing yourself of normative language. So things like mistakes are normative language, but you don't think mistakes exist because you don't think there are.
I do think mistakes exist. Sure, I do.
Well, now you're just contradicting yourself.
No, I'm not. I think that there's nothing wrong with us having a way of talking about things, but I think that
normative?
Mistakes are when you are out of accord with what you wanted to do.
Yeah. So are mistakes normative?
That would be a norm, wouldn't it?
Okay. So are there oughts?
They are self-imposed, right? They are a way of talking.
So there are oughts?
No, they don't exist out there in the world. They're not objective. They are personal to the agent.
What you're saying?
They're not real. They aren't like a particle floating out in space.
Are mistakes real?
Mistakes, yes, they're real in the sense that they show that you are out of accord with your original intentions.
So mistakes are real, but norms aren't real.
Which, just to clarify,
just
to clarify, aren't real.
What?
So the mistakes are real in lieu of them being cashed out in this.
Is Mount Everest? Is it objectively true that Mount Everest is a beautiful mountain?
I don't know.
You don't know? You don't know?
I don't see how it's relevant.
Is Mount Everest a beautiful mountain? I think it is. I think it is. That's true. That is true for me. It is true for me that it's a beautiful mountain. Somebody else might think might react in horror to Mount Everest because their friends died on Mount Everest. So they react in horror. And I react in pleasure. But it's true just for me. It's not objectively true.
So you think there are odds, but they're just subjective.
It's true for me that Mount Everest is beautiful. It's true for me that I am out of accord with my intentions. But my intentions don't exist like out there in the world the way Mount Everest does.
I think you might have gone through a time.
How does that not make sense? There's a distinction to be made between statements.
I got cut out. Are you saying that there are oughts? They're just subjective?
What do you? If they're no.
So they're not.
What are you talking about?
They're not objective and they're not subjective. What's the other option?
They are subjective.
Right. So why did you answer no? What are you talking about when I said are oughts subjective? I don't know.
Because we take objective to mean that something that's independent of simply my personal subjective point of view. It's my personal subjective point of view that I like Rocky Road ice cream. So not everybody does.
No when I asked you if oughts are subjective, I don't understand. If the answer is yes, why'd you answer no?
I don't know what I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my God, you're just so crazy.
You're equivocating on the distinction between objective and subjective.
What? What equivocation?
You're trying to claim that because I have a subjective thoughts and desires, that these are somehow real in a sense that is not to be distinguished between, say, the fact that Mount Everest is 26,000 feet above sea level, or something like that. Or
So we're saying that because you have them, they exist.
They exist for me.
They don't exist because she doesn't have subjectivity on her view.
Right. What do you mean when you say that they don't exist?
What's that?
What do you mean when you say they don't exist?
I mean, for you, they don't exist. Like, there are no norms. There is no subjectivity. There's only objectivity.
No norms?
What?
Normative language, that kind of language is a way of talking about things. It's just a way of talking about things.
Yeah, so you're just
at the bottom,
the objective, right? You're just redescribing the objective when you say it's a way of talking about
okay, so it is objectively the case that there's a distinction to be made, though. It is objectively the case that I like Rocky Road ice cream. That would be it's an objective fact about me, but it's not a fact about the external world.
And Josh, it's not just normative language. Like when you take away intentions, right? It's all language. There's no fact. There's no meaning behind any of the utterances. Right?
No.
There's no meaning behind any of the utterances. In virtue of what could there possibly be meaning?
Sure there is. Because meaning is assigned to things. We give things meaning. They don't have meaning.
He's asking what you would appeal to explain the meaning. The whole point is to show that you can't appeal to some physical fact to explain the meaning. So then, if not intentions, what are you appealing to?
I'm appealing to my intentions,
which don't exist.
But you don't think they exist.
Like it's just so obvious that she's contradicting.
Yes, they do.
She says,
yes, they do.
There are no norms.
No, not
there are no odds. But then there are odds. They're just subjective. But there is no normative.
That's because you are equivocating. I'm not. I'm drawing a distinction between what is personal to me, right? The fact that I like ice cream. Right, and what is objective and not personal to me, right? The fact that Mount Everest is 26,000 feet isn't my opinion, but it is my opinion that it's a beautiful mountain.
Why is
I'm drawing that distinction, and you're trying to confuse that distinction.
I'm not trying to confuse anything. I'm saying that you're saying that mistakes. What a mistake is it's normative. It's an ought. It's saying that this oughtn't to have been the case, right? And then you said that there are no oughts, right?
Yes.
And so I don't understand how to interpret that in any way other than a contradiction. It's either the case that there are mistakes, in which case it's the case that something oughtn't to have been the case, or it's the case that there are no oughts, and then it's not the case that anything oughtn't to have been the case.
That's because you, for some reason, choose not to understand that the same word can have different meanings within different contexts.
Now who's equivocating?
Within the context, that's not equivocation. That's how language is done. Words have meanings within different contexts.
The context was the same. We were talking
about... It's not the same. It's different.
Josh gave you an either-or question, right?
No, it's a different context. There's a difference between I think Mount Everest is a beautiful mountain. That's personal to me. That's my subjective opinion. Mount Everest is 26,000 feet above sea level is not my personal opinion. It is an objective fact about states of affairs in the world. They're different.
But you said there are no oughts, though, right? Just to be clear, you said there are no oughts, right?
In the sense that there's an objective state of affairs about oughts. You remove people from the universe, and there are no oughts.
Okay. So It's not the case that if given one brain state, anybody ought to have had a different brain state, or it's not the case that given one state of affairs, anything ought to have been anything different, right?
If you remove people from the universe, there will be no oughts, no norms, no intentions.
Right, but with people there are.
I mean,
I agree with that, but with people there are oughts. But with people there are oughts, right?
Yes, people have those feelings. People feel that murder is wrong, right?
Hang on, Brenda. let me ask you this. Just because you think something is personal, do you think it's not part of the world?
It's part of the world in the sense that it is particular to me. With people, there are these apes. There's these apes, these primates on this dirty little rock, and they value things over other things. So what?
Look, hang on, stop. If you think that you have this particular about you, right? Is that not in fact a fact about reality? Right? That's a state of affairs, right? In reality, that you have this particular, regardless of whether or not it's shared.
But it's particular just to me.
So
it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist if I'm removed or all humanity is removed from the world.
Disagreed with that.
Right. But you're trying to give it a significance greater than what it actually has.
The significance is that it exists because you exist.
What do you mean? You're equivocating on exists. What do you mean exists?
It's here in the world. It's a fact of the world.
Everything is equivocation. Jesus Christ.
The fact that I value chocolate ice cream, right? It doesn't follow
Brenda,
that chocolate ice cream has value.
Brenda, just because its existence is contingent on you doesn't mean he's using exist in a different way. Right? It's not equivocation just because he thinks
it does mean that. So the fact there is a fact of the matter, a fact of the world that I value chocolate ice cream. That is a fact of the world. I exist in the world. It is an objective fact that I value chocolate ice cream. But
I'm asking what the equivocation.
The equivocation is that they're then trying to conclude that therefore chocolate ice cream has this value.
I don't think they are.
I think that is the case. They're trying to equivocate between the fact that I value and the fact that values have some sort of existence.
But you just heard them affirm that it was contingent on you. So it doesn't seem like you would have reason to think there's.
Well, what do you think we can conclude from the fact that I like chocolate ice cream?
That you have intentions and beliefs, and you're a person.
So that's just a certain way of talking, right, about me. So what?
But you're the one asserting that they're equivocating.
Yeah, they're equivocating on the existence part.
I just don't see the equivocation.
That intentions or norms have some sort of existence over and beyond the fact that I have these personal desires of mine. I desire ice cream. I prefer chocolate ice cream. There's nothing more that can be concluded from that other than that those are my personal desires. They exist in the world. They are facts about me. They are facts about the world if it includes me, but there is nothing else to be concluded from that. From the fact that I think that murder is wrong, you can't conclude that there's some kind of objective morality. You don't believe in objective morality, do you, Pogan?
What the fuck are you talking about, dude?
I don't. Well, no, obviously not.
I think, I could think it's immoral for people to consume anything other than chocolate ice cream. I could think that. It would be a fact. It would be a fact. And a fact now you're pretending not to understand.
Nobody understands you. You're not at all.
Well, I'm definitely going to hell.
What's the problem? What's the problem with it? It is an objective fact of the world that I believe that if you consume anything other than chocolate ice cream, you're committing a heinous crime, a sin. It's immoral. And that is an objective fact about me. It's a fact about the world.
How is it relevant?
Right?
How is it relevant?
That's what you were saying before. You were saying before, just before, you were saying that you're trying to claim that norms and intentions have some kind of factual status over and beyond the fact that I have them. And now all of a sudden, when I bring up this example, now you pretend not to know what I'm talking about.
If you have them, then you just agree with the argument. So I don't understand what you're saying.
What argument am I agreeing with?
The rule following argument.
That you have these.
The rule following argument simply talks about what's logically possible.
Why do you keep saying this nonsense? It's crazy.
I don't.
It's like a broken record. It's insane.
Yeah. What does it?
Real quick, what I don't understand about the rule following argument, if it always, as long as people get the right answer, right? So, for example, does it matter if they're doing quaddition incorrectly and they're getting 2 and 5 equals 12, and the other person is doing addition and doing it